Happy Sunday, everybody. Thank you, Sherry. That's one of my favorites, crowd pleaser. But welcome to the fourth group session, which today we're going to get into the details of Discovery Day. So I know a lot of you guys are at the point where that's probably the next step, or you may have already been invited to one, or you're thinking about it. I know some of you may have had some delays on getting a disclosure document or something like that in the process, but running a business is all about seeing the obstacle and overcoming the obstacle and moving on. So we're gonna dig into that. So we'll look at the big picture as we do, kind of see where we've been, where we're at, and obviously where we're going. We'll check out where the fellow veterans are on the leaderboard. And then we'll get into what is Discovery Day, what are the expectations. We'll talk about the franchise agreement a little bit and the franchise fee payment to make sure that there aren't any surprises for you guys. And then we'll dive into what it looks like after you become a Vetrepreneur. So, you find a franchise you like, you sign the franchise agreement, you pay your franchise fee, you are now officially a Vetrepreneur. And then what happens next? And we'll get into that a little bit. And then Q&A, obviously the more interactive, you guys want to make this, the more if you guys have experiences with a Discovery Day or something to throw out that you could share with the other folks that might be helpful, please do. You can either come off mic or throw it in the chat, and we'll either take questions at certain breaks as we go, or at the end we'll take a general Q&A session and then do the breakout session between me and Brittany. All right, next slide. There's the mountain. We are getting up there. So thinking back to the info session back in late March, kicked it off in the beginning of May. And then for that next month, 4 or 5 weeks, it was kind of internal, looking at, your coach, learning about you, seeing kind of where you're at, where you've been, trying to sift through the hundreds and thousands of franchises to see what the best fits would be for you. And then you guys have made the leap to reach out and actually dive into this process and learn from the franchisor what it is, what they do, what it's like to run this business, and what's a day in a life look like. And no better way to do that than to find out from the franchisor, find out from people running that business, other franchisees that you get to talk to during validation. And really this Discovery Day is after you do that validation, this is kind of the final validation. And it's a really important day, and we'll get into that. And then about 4 weeks from now will be the graduation, where it'll be the shining star on top of the mountain, and see where you guys are at. Because after confirmation day, the next step is really franchise award and signing a franchise agreement. So, all right, next slide. So class 2507, still 14 strong, going through the process. You can see a lot of you guys are at step 7 or step 8, the vast majority. Still some that are making progress, and sometimes there's good reasons why you may need to re-evaluate some options or get hung up on a certain step. But a lot of people making their way through and really getting answers to questions in this process, and hopefully you're armed and you feel like you're armed with the information to make an educated decision through this process. So, all right. So we'll dive into it. And like I said, if you guys have questions, just come off mic and or throw it in the chat, and we'll hit them as we go. But I know a lot of the folks on my team, I'm sure, have heard kind of the high level pitch of what Discovery Day is, but it's really, I refer to it as the dog and pony show, but it's really usually the last step in the process a franchise has. Some of them do it a little differently. Some of them do it a Discovery Day before you can do validation. But for the most part, it's where you have the opportunity to get to meet the founder and the key stakeholders in that franchise, and you have a chance to develop a relationship with them. And really what you want to do is find out, the culture and the vibe and the feel of that franchise. Might have been great and a great experience with the franchise development person you're working with, but it's really important to make sure that that same vibe and culture and feel is there with the people at that C-suite of the franchise. If you love the person you're working with, the franchise development person, going through the process, You sign a franchise agreement and it's a 10-year term. Oh, by the way, you're not going to be working with that person anymore. You're going to be going to training and doing the next steps in the franchise process with that C-suite of people in that franchise as your support, along with obviously the other folks that you've connected with during validation. So discovery day is a big deal. I mean, it is, not everybody gets invited to a discovery day. And, when you get invited to one, it's not just yeah, I'm going to go do it. You would want to be about 90% sure that that's the franchise that is right for you, and that, you want to spend a half day, full day. Some of them are in person, and a lot of times they may cover a night in a hotel, but you typically are covering the transportation. They all do that a little differently. But it could be 2 days, out of your life to spend really developing the relationship with those C-suite of people, and they don't invite everybody. So it's that final two-way check on validating not only everything you heard from the franchise development person you're working with, but also the things you heard from the other people working the business, the other franchisees. And it's a great opportunity to meet that leadership team. And as much as, you want to be polite and respectful, you also need to ask the tough questions and get answers, and really make sure that this is the right fit for you, because it is a two-way evaluation process. So that rapport and that, fit and feel is really important. If you have a chance to do it in person, I definitely recommend that. A lot of them do it virtually. Some of them may do it virtually and have an option to do in person. So if that's an option and you can make that happen, highly encourage it. Okay, next slide. So what to expect on Discovery Day? So if it is in person, typically beforehand, usually if you have to travel, a lot of times you'll get there the evening before, and they'll typically invite you to a dinner, usually with maybe the founder or some of the directors of the franchise, get to know them on a little more informal basis. And then, spend the night in the hotel, wake up the next morning. And it's usually the better part of a full day to go to the franchise headquarters, get the tour, meet the people. It's usually a pretty detailed agenda of here's who you are going to meet with at what time, which is easier to do than to say, thankfully. But that gives you an opportunity to do with that agenda is kind of dig in and learn about each of those people. And if you guys were on the FDD and validation group call, you learned from Mr. Rosenthal, the attorney, that they can only go back 5 years in history for the people in the FDD when they put their past experience. So, it gives you an opportunity if you want to do some searching on LinkedIn or Googling folks, or, trying to see their history and what they're bringing to the table, but also really thinking about what questions specifically for that. Maybe it's the director of operations, maybe it's the director of marketing, maybe it's the director of training. What kind of questions do you have that you may have asked other franchisees, but you just want to validate that, the way they're doing it now is still the same as maybe somebody that, you might have been talking to somebody that's been in this franchise for 8 years, and they may do things a little differently. So it's a great chance to really pick the brain, and it also is a good indication to the C-suite folks in the franchise of how you're thinking about the business, how engaged you are, and they'll see that as valuable to bring you into the process, because at this point they haven't offered you the franchise agreement or the chance to, the offer to join the franchise. Typically that will happen during this day. Sometimes it happens prior to you going to Discovery Day. But usually at Discovery Day, you'll go through, learn a ton from that leadership team. But usually once they make you that offer, they would like an answer within, typically, I would say it's closer to 7 days. Some of them it's as little as, if you're able to sign it within 24 hours, there may be an incentive for you to do that. But I know the few franchises that do that actually let you know that in advance, giving you the chance to get answers to questions prior to going there. So Typically that decision comes shortly after a discovery day. So planning your discovery day, knowing when that's going to be, it's important to get back with your coach, make sure you've got validation done, talking with the franchise attorney if you want them to review the franchise agreement and the documents, getting that set up, just to make sure that you're in a position to be able to make that decision because they're going to ask it. All right, I think I hit everything on there. All right, so this should look familiar. So the 4 options for the franchise agreement review. Realize the difference, and I'll make a real estate analogy. You've got your franchise disclosure document, which in real estate is like your seller disclosure. That's a disclosure. That's not a contract. That is what it is, right? That's the 23 items that you reviewed as part of step 7 in the FDD review. An exhibit of that franchise disclosure document is the franchise agreement. That's the actual agreement that is like the sales contract in real estate that you would sign. If there is anything that's negotiable in that agreement, it would be in the franchise agreement, not the disclosure document. And when reading through the franchise agreement, you would want to treat it just like you treated the disclosure document. And this list is taken right from the list of what to do with the disclosure document. And the first is to read it and write down all the questions and concerns you have. The second is to review it with your franchisor, the franchise development person you're working with. Those first 2 options are mandatory. The first 3 options are free, right? So you still have questions after talking to the franchisor about the agreement. You know, hey, this doesn't seem right, or, you know, is this normal? Throw it past your coach. We'll use the experience we have going through a lot of these to tell you what we've seen in the past. Maybe we've had folks that have joined that franchise in the past and become vetrepreneurs, and we'll share that with you. And then the last option, which is the only one that isn't free, is to have that final review with the franchise attorney. And we'll make sure that you're aware of that, have that as an option, and get you connected with a franchise attorney if you don't know or have one lined up already, to make sure that they have time to review that document, give you their take on it, let you know if anything's negotiable, or if there's anything in there that's just outside the industry norm that you would want to know about before signing it. So hopefully that sounds familiar as we reviewed it on the last group call with the FDD. So, all right, I think we're good there. Franchise fee payment. So I'm glad we covered this because I try to call this out to the folks I'm working with, but general rule of thumb, and you guys know by now, the franchise fee is typically that 40 to 60K one-time fee that 90% of the time there's a veteran discount for. The expectation from the franchisor is that you pay the franchise fee the same day or within 24 hours of signing the franchise agreement. And a lot of folks are like, well, I'm doing an SBA loan, so I'll use the SBA to pay the franchise fee. Well, the problem is you don't actually apply for the SBA loan until you have a signed franchise agreement. And it'll take 30 to 45 days to get typically an SBA loan funded, depending on the franchise, if it's real estate involved and whatnot. So you'd want to find out and have a discussion with your franchisor to make sure that you know the expectation and you know how much the franchise fee would be depending on your territory. Some folks will go through and be looking to secure multiple territories, have that number figured out, and find out the expectation of when they would expect that to be paid so that you have a way to do that. And a lot of times, you know, when talking to the franchise accountants, you can look at different options for doing that. You know, I've seen people that could use a HELOC to pay the franchise fee and use the SBA loan to pay themselves part of that back once the SBA loan does fund. There are some instances, if you're using an SBA loan, where the franchisor will let you pay a deposit on the franchise fee and then pay the rest of it once the SBA loan funds. But that's something you definitely have to work out in advance. And also realize, depending on the amount of the SBA loan you're getting, the lender may be requiring you to put 20% down as a cash injection in the business, which might, you know, depending on the size of your loan, might cover the full franchise fee. So that deposit, even though the franchisor offers it, the lender may want you still to be putting, 20% of that loan amount down. So all good things to make sure. If you have questions on that, talk to Brittany and I, make sure you're talking to the franchisor, and have a plan for how you want to handle that. Once you sign the franchise agreement and pay that franchise fee, now you're a Vetrepreneur. So that's like the next thing. And, Brittany will get into some of the next steps after that. You're at the top of the mountain. You are now a franchisee working to open and start your business. So hopefully that clears up if there was any confusion on franchise fee payment and expectations on that. So I think this is where I hand it off to Brittany, but should we maybe take questions and just see if I've confused anyone or if that made sense? Does anybody have anything? We can save it till later. I know I wasn't clear, so I appreciate it. All right, everybody, I'll hand it over to Brittany to go through the rest.
Thanks, Doug. So as we, start to come to the end of this journey together, I think this is our last group call before graduation. So I just want to take a moment to talk about all of the people, the Vetrepreneurs that came before you, and just remind you that all of these people have sat in the same exact seat that you're in on this same call. Just a few weeks before graduation, and asking themselves, the questions that are probably running through your head right now, which are, am I even ready to do this? Can I actually do this? What happens if my business fails, if I fail, right? So those are all normal questions that people ask themselves, especially at this point in the process. So that just goes to say that, we all have our doubts, but those are things that at this point you can now overcome with all of the knowledge that you have about franchising and about your brand at this point. So the one thing I think that sets Vetrepreneurs apart is that they stayed completely open to the process and they just kept moving forward. I honestly think that that's the theme of the academy and of this whole coaching process, is just trusting yourselves enough to keep putting one foot in front of the other. And some of these, I would say most of our Vetrepreneurs have had zero business experience, right? And so they were really relying on the franchisor to provide them with that initial training that you're going to get once you become a franchise owner. A lot of them had short military careers, long ones, went to corporate. So, but again, just the common theme of continuing to move forward. So I don't think we've ever had a Vetrepreneur who purchased a franchise and said, I wish I never did this. I think really the common theme is, just pride and realizing that they could finally, create a business, and that something that is theirs, taking ownership of something that is theirs. So all of you have come through the academy at this point. You've done the work. You guys have stayed committed, attended your group calls, your one-on-one coaching calls. And so really in a few weeks, you're going to be standing right where they stood, ready to make that decision, depending on where you are in the process. And that really could reshape what the next chapter of your life is going to look like. So I think this is a very exciting time, right? Just remember your fears are going to come up, but this is exciting times for you, your family, your business partner. So really looking forward to seeing how things shake out here at graduation in a few weeks. All right, next slide, please. So what does it look like after I become a Vetrepreneur? So you'll see my huge face on the back of this slide. I went through this whole process too, so I understand exactly how you guys are feeling, but understanding how life might change from before you purchase your business to after. So we'll kind of take that step by step. So life before becoming a Vetrepreneur. Most of us, I think, are coming from a world of structure where we have military service, or maybe you're working for the government, or maybe a corporate job. But regardless, there's usually a chain of command. You have a daily battle rhythm. You've got clear expectations given to you by, a supervisor. And so I think those structures, they are very safe and they can even feel really comfortable. But I think what those often lack is ownership. And that's why a lot of you have come to us. And so when Doug and I have sat on your guys' discovery calls, those very first calls with you, and we asked you, what is your why? I think more often than not, people are saying, I want something that is mine. I want to build something for me and for my family and to leave a legacy. And sometimes, that's just something you can't really do in corporate America, or working for the government. So, um, just realizing that, you guys are building a life for you, and you guys have all passed the marshmallow test at this point. So congratulations, you're looking forward and into the future. Initial franchise training. So once you decide to move forward, just remember you're not going to be left to figure it all out on your own. You're not going to have a Vetrepreneur. Honestly, once you purchase, that's our job here is done with you, right? We are obviously here to always stay in contact and connect over LinkedIn and be here as friends moving forward. But really, that initial franchise training is going to be from the franchisor. So this is where you're going to learn their systems, how they operate, how to deliver the service that they have, and how to build the business their way, right? So everything is all mapped out. You have that blueprint. You're not going to be guessing. You're following the model that's already been tested and refined for you. So you're also going to meet new owners in this stage. You're also going to be meeting new owners, potential owners at Discovery Day as well. So usually when you go to Discovery Day, those owners that you're going to Discovery Day with, if all of you decide, we're moving forward, you guys will usually go to training together as well. So those relationships start to get formed pretty early, and they're going to stick with you throughout your journey. Opening your business. So then this is that really big moment. This is your grand opening. It's very emotional. It's surreal. It can be nerve-wracking getting that first customer or swiping that first transaction. So this is when things start to become real and everything clicks, and all of the hard work that you did before is coming to it's real life now. So you are a business owner at this point, and this can really change how you start to see yourself, and how you start to operate moving forward. Partnering with your spouse. Some of you guys have spouses joining you on this journey. Some of you are doing it solo. Some might have a business partner. But if you are building this with your spouse or your family, there's going to be a transition. And so that's something to keep in mind, right? Roles are going to shift. Communication becomes more important than ever in business. So learning how to separate business from home life, and sometimes how to blend the two as well. So it will definitely stretch you, but I think for most of our couples, this really becomes one of the most rewarding parts in business, because you start to build something side by side with your spouse or partner, and that's something that belongs to both of you. Adapting to a franchise business model. So I think one of the key things here to succeeding in franchising is just learning how to follow the model, right? Plugging and playing. It's not about reinventing the wheel. It's really about executing. And like I mentioned before, franchises really give you that playbook, and really your job is to run it. So I think for many of our veterepreneurs, that's a huge advantage, because veterans are used to structure, right? You know how to work within systems, within SOPs and processes, and you take pride in following through. So I think this is really where that mindset starts to pay off. All right, singing cadence with a new pace. So the pace of business ownership is different. It's very different. Some days it's all hands on deck. and you might run into staff issues or customer dissatisfaction, right? Things that you might have to put out some fires. But other days, it might be slower. It might be more strategic, where you have more time to sit down and start to map out different parts of your business. So that change in rhythm, I think, can be a little bit disorienting at first. At least it was for me, but over time you start to develop your own cadence, and when that starts to fit your lifestyle, right? And I think that's another, big point of business ownership, is we all want more time. That's really what it comes down to with our families, with things that we like to do. And so you really get to develop that as a business owner. So, leaving corporate is like leaving the military all over again. You must adapt and overcome. So, I think this transition for a lot of you will feel very familiar. Leaving your current job is a lot like transitioning out of the military. I think it brings together all those same feelings of freedom and excitement and uncertainty, right? You don't know what's on the other side, but um, and there are going to be moments where you miss the clarity of having a command structure, or that regular paycheck that to the cent, that's going to show up. But just like before, understanding that you all were built for this, right? You are going to adapt, you are going to figure it out, and you've honestly overcome bigger transitions than this. So having confidence in yourself. Leading locally, and then also thinking about that franchisee exit plan. So as your business grows, um, your role becomes really less about those day-to-day tasks and more about leadership. So you're going to be building a team, right? If you have employees under you, it's time for you to start creating that culture, representing the brand within your community. So, and you're becoming a leader in your local area, right? There's not a lot of business owners in communities when you do the math on it. So you are going to be a leader in that area. And then also starting to think about the franchisee exit plan. And I think a lot of people are like, it's too soon, I just started. But the exit plan and building that, it starts on day one. You really need to start to build that solid foundation, asking yourself, is this something I'm going to pass down to someone? Am I going to scale and sell it? So I think knowing those long-term goals really early on is going to help that strategy from day one. So this is really what it looks like as a vetrepreneur, and it's very exciting stuff. And after Discovery Day, I think all of you will have that clarity that you need to decide if this is the path that you're ready to take. And you've done all the coaching calls, you've done the one-on-ones, the group calls, you have all of the information, the tools, and hopefully the confidence at this point to, say, yes, that I can step into this next chapter and I'm ready for it. So congrats on making it this far. All right. So, any questions as you guys head into Discovery Day? Anything that's on your mind? Yeah, Michael.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Cool. So I guess the question is, if there's something in the franchise agreement that we're going to try to negotiate, when is Discovery Day like not the best time for that, would you say, or when it's really a more ideal situation?
That's a great question. So if you have not yet been introduced to maybe an attorney, that would be a good time to do that, right? As you start to head into Discovery Day, if you want a lawyer to negotiate for you. If you're doing it independently, I don't think it hurts to start the conversation at Discovery Day. But usually you're going to have a wrap-up meeting. So usually, the week after you attend your Discovery Day, you'll have a one-on-one with the team. And I think that would probably be the best time to start negotiating franchise agreement. Doug, would you agree with that?
Yeah, I do. I think you want to be in a position where they've offered the franchise agreement and you kind of go off and do your last bit of due diligence, because
Mhm.
the in my opinion, the opinion of the attorney is going to know what's the industry norm, and is this, maybe if it's a newer franchise, there could be maybe another angle to take that might even be more beneficial, that he might have some insight on, he or she, depending on the attorney you use. But yeah, I think that's a good question. I agree. I would start, maybe put feelers out to see if it's a firm thing, or if there is wiggle room, during the discovery day.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Great question. Thanks, Michael. Anybody else have any questions? All right.
Yes, you
Well,
nailed it, Brittany.
all right. So I think we're doing breakout sessions. Are we doing that this round? Okay, awesome. So we'll break out with the coaches. But congrats to everyone on making it this far before we all head out. Next call of all of us together is going to be graduation. So make sure you're tying up your loose ends or wherever you're at in the process. Reminder, you don't need to purchase a franchise to graduate. So but we're excited to see all of you there. All right. We'll see you in the breakout sessions.